Why the Boston Red Sox need to fire hitting coach Pete Fatse.
You are Locked On Red Sox, your daily Boston Red Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Red Sox, your daily Boston Red Sox podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Gabby Maljanian, former ESPN social media associate and current host of the Boston Balling podcast as well. And I am here to bring you the latest in all things Boston Red Sox, Monday through Friday, straight to your favorite podcast feed. And want to know the best part? It's free, so you might as well tune in because Locked On is your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. I'll tell you a little bit more about that later on today's show, but here we are. The Red Sox are now 1-4 to start the season. Definitely not how you want to start off, but also it's literally the first day of April, so happy April Fool's Day, I guess, if you participate in that. Happy spring. And to put things into perspective here, it is such a long season. And while it might feel like you want to punch a wall or something like that, don't do that if you have nice, very expensive walls at your house. I understand that perspective on it because of the fact that it seems reminiscent of how things have gone for the Red Sox the last few years. And I think people in the back of their minds know that this season could be different because the Red Sox did make moves this offseason to improve the team, which they 100% did. But I think getting off to a slow start kind of gives people worries of, okay, are we just going to see the same thing this year that we've seen the last few years? So I understand having that reactionary type of thought, but at the same time, you do have to remember that it is so early on in the season. And when it comes to teams, every team goes through slumps, and 1-4 to start the season in March is literally the exact same thing as having a 1-4 stretch in July. It just feels a lot worse because it's the beginning of the season. So you don't have all of these games on your track record to compare it to. So if you go through a tough stretch in July, for example, you're already in the middle of the season. So your record looks like it's a little bit better. Whereas when it's at the very beginning of the season, it feels more like it might be the end of the world for some because it's just a rough start early on. Should we be panicking if it was June and things were not improving? 100%. I totally would understand that. But when you think about guys like Rafael Devers and Alex Bregman, those two players in particular are way too talented not to figure it out offensively. I mean, it's really, really difficult to be as bad as Devers has been. And obviously, he's been striking out a ton, which is completely unacceptable. But he's also created an ability to be patient with his at-bats and work walks. In his first at-bat of the day against the Orioles yesterday in an 8-5 Red Sox loss, he worked a 9-pitch walk. And that was impressive and nice to see. And his swing selection has not been bad. It's just that he's been late with his timing. And I do still think he needs a day to be out of the lineup and just kind of reset himself. But that's an Alex Cora decision. And Alex Bregman, I do feel like we'll figure it out. The thing that I am concerned about overall is the general offensive approach of this entire team. And that goes back to one man, Pete Fatse, the hitting coach. I have wanted him gone for the last couple seasons. The writing was on the wall to me that things were not improving offensively with him. And he creates this offense to where they all go up to the plate and it feels like they're all just hanging around trying too hard to wait for certain pitches and it's not going their way. And then they end up striking out because they don't find the pitch that they need. And then they get completely thrown off and flustered during their at-bats because their selection is not at where it should be because they're being so focused and laser beamed on a specific pitch that they're trying to find. And there's just tons of swings and misses with this lineup. And it is a really uncomfortable feeling watching that. I mean, on Monday in the game against the Orioles, the Red Sox added 13 more strikeouts as a team. And just to put that into perspective, the Orioles had 7 strikeouts as a team. So double-digit strikeouts for the Red Sox as a team consistently is very much not good. And when you have a team that consistently has the same problem, because they had this swing and miss problem last year, and I said towards the end of the season, they should get rid of Fatse at the end of this year. Did that happen? No. And now here we are early on in the season, and they are still swinging and missing a lot. And I'm definitely not one to say fire everybody. Nothing is going well and this team can't figure anything out, because like I said before, it literally is April 1st. They've played 5 games, so we can't really jump to conclusions about how the rest of the season will go because it's far too soon to do that. But we can make judgments about how things are going based on past seasons. And based on past seasons and what we've seen from this offense in general, it appears to be that the hitting approach for these guys is the same as it was last year when the Red Sox were just generating tons of strikeouts at the plate. So something needs to change, and that something is organizational to me. Get rid of Fatse, bring in another hitting coach who can provide a different outlook on what these guys should be doing at the plate. And then maybe you'll see more success from guys like Trevor Story, who has struggled at the plate a lot since being a part of the Boston Red Sox, a guy who not only has had injuries throughout the course of his time here, but on top of that has also been a guy who just hasn't been able to hit well effectively. And maybe a change in face, somebody else to come in and control the offense and the plate approach of this team as a whole. Maybe he's somebody who could benefit from that. And I've always been rooting for Story. I want him to do well. I think he's truly a guy who goes out there and plays with integrity and heart and wants to win and wants to put the Boston Red Sox in a really good place to succeed. So in that regard, I really want to see him perform better than he is, like genuinely. But the problem that I have still is that he's continuously striking out, just like Devers is. And obviously, it's more noticeable with Devers because it's just so uncharacteristic for Devers. But the problem is that this is kind of normal for Story, and this is what we've gotten used to seeing from him a lot in his time in Boston. Now, granted, when he came back from his injury last year in the last month or so of the season, he did hit pretty well, and he was putting together some really nice hits at the plate. The problem that I had there was just that could have just been a stretch in which he was hitting really well. And I said, okay, great. Let's hope he carries that over into next season. Then he had a big spring. And I said, wow, maybe Story really is ready to go for this season. And now he's off to a slow start too. I 100% would like to think that's going to change, of course. But because of what we've seen overall from him and his time in a Red Sox uniform, it's hard to really feel confident that he is going to be a consistently good hitter this season. And nobody will ever take away his defense. The Red Sox turned a few double plays in the game on Monday, and he was a big part of that. So there's no doubt that his defense makes the infield better. It's just a question of his offense. And again, this all stems back to Pete Fatse. Even a guy like Rafael, who we've seen make slight strides when it comes to his offense, but not a big enough improvement at this point yet to where I can feel confident with rolling him out there every day in that 9 spot. You want to see guys continue to grow. And my problem under Fatse is that we haven't seen a lot of upward growth from these hitters as a whole. And there's been a lot of guys who have stayed stagnant. And granted, Wilyer Abreu is off to a really hot start for this team. Christian Campbell has been doing his part to contribute offensively. Jarren Duran got a big hit in the game on Monday. So there are guys who are doing their part. Romy Gonzalez still remains a guy who can be relied on to hit. And I like that about him too. But then you look at certain players and specifically naming the guys I just talked about, how do you justify keeping Fatse here if these guys are continuing to struggle? Obviously, that means that something needs to be done. And that something to me is to start with getting rid of him, bringing in a new guy who can control the offensive game plan day to day. And we might start to see some better results from some of these hitters, because it's really frustrating going year after year and seeing this offense the way that it is. And naturally, every offense is going to go through streaks. offenses go through hot streaks and offenses go through cold streaks. That's just part of the game. There's a lot of games to be played, and every team goes through periods where they can't hit anything. And that is okay. And maybe the Red Sox are in one of those slumps right now, but that doesn't mean that it is just a slump. There's room for improvement there overall because I'm picking up on the same patterns from the past. So get rid of Pete Fatse, start off with somebody new as the hitting coach, and see what kinds of results you get, because at least then you know if the guys are still struggling in the same way, that it is more about these individual hitters. But if you get rid of Fatse and you bring in somebody else and we start to see some more positive results at the plate from everybody, then you can say, okay, then it was a Fatse problem and the offensive approach has changed and these guys are finding more success. Got to make changes, kind of like when they changed their pitching coach and brought in Andrew Bailey. You have to make changes sometimes to your personnel. And I don't know why they've been so stuck on keeping Fatse around for so long, but get rid of him ASAP. Coming up, I'm going to be talking about a guy who has been throwing out of the bullpen and has pitched really well there, and that's Garrett Whitlock. I love FanDuel. I love the idea of it because of the fact that it really allows you to make lots of money. And with March Madness coming to a close soon, you are running out of chances to win big on that platform via March Madness games. But now that baseball season is here, you can continue to bet on that. And you can also continue to bet on basketball pro level and also hockey, because those are still going on. And also, FanDuel is offering you a great deal of $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's 200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to home runs. There are so many different options that you can choose from. And even if you're not big into sports betting, it could be a great starting platform for you to be able to continue to make lots of money. And the more money you make on it, the more you'll want to do it. So check out FanDuel today. Just visit FanDuel.com and get in on all of the action. You won't want to waste a minute. I promise you, it'll change your life. Garrett Whitlock, a guy who the Boston Red Sox have been very high on ever since they selected him in the Rule 5 draft a few years back. And the tough thing with Whitlock is that he has had his fair number of injuries that he has gone through in his time in a Boston Red Sox uniform. And people have been waiting for him to finally be healthy. And now he is healthy and he's been pitching out of the bullpen. And I have been a huge advocate for keeping Garrett Whitlock in the bullpen. The Red Sox tried to make him a starter and he wasn't as effective as he is as a reliever. He threw out of the pen on Monday in the Red Sox 8-5 loss against Baltimore. And he went 2 innings and gave up just 1 hit and struck out 1 and gave up no walks and no runs. So zeros across the board for him. He looked very good the whole time. And just giving up that 1 hit and no runs and not getting into any sort of trouble was key. Did generate a couple swings and misses as well over those 2 innings. And the biggest thing I've noticed with Whitlock that makes him more effective out of the pen is that his velocity is higher. He averages about 97 or 98 out of the bullpen, whereas as a starter, we weren't really seeing him hit 97 a lot. He was hitting closer to 93, 94 miles an hour generally. And that has been the biggest difference maker to me when it comes to Whitlock as a reliever. And not only that, but it'll hopefully allow him to be healthier, because notice how his injuries would come up when the Red Sox were trying to stretch him out into being a starter, and then he'd get hurt and not be able to pitch for the rest of the season. And last year he missed essentially the whole season. And now he's pitching out of the pen and so far feels really good. And that is telling. his arm might just simply not be fit to be a starter, and that's okay. Not everybody's arm is fit to be a starter. And what I really like about bullpen Garrett Whitlock is that they can put him into high leverage situations and he can get the job done. The Red Sox were only down by 1 run when he came in to pitch in the game. And it was interesting because usually he's the type of guy that you would think would pitch when the Red Sox are winning by a run and have him try to keep that lead. But it had been a bit since he had been used, and Alex Cora probably wanted to put him in the game to kind of keep his arm active. And because they were only down 1 run, he wanted to put some of those high leverage arms in the game to give the Red Sox a chance. Because notice how later on in that game, Justin Slayton pitched. He did not have it at all. Gave up 3 hits and 4 earned runs and walked 1. So it was not Justin Slayton's day. As soon as he couldn't record an out and things got messy, Alex Cora pulled him and put in Cooper Criswell, who inherited the bases loaded. So not a fun time for him. He ended up actually letting up those runs, but a couple of them that were scored when Criswell was pitching weren't actually charged to Criswell because he didn't put those guys on base. So they were charged to Slayton. So a messy day for him. Everybody's due for those. It happens. The Red Sox bullpen had been completely lights out up until this point and hadn't allowed a single run until that game on Monday in Baltimore. And it's just one of those things where that is what it is. And the Red Sox were just not in the best position to win that game after that happened. But when you see Garrett Whitlock and Justin Slayton's name come across, obviously Alex Cora was trying really hard to keep that deficit at 1 run to give the offense a chance to come back and score. Now, with the way that this offense has been hitting to start the season, 1 run feels like a huge mountain to climb overall. But in this specific game, I think Cora felt like the offense had a shot to come in and score and tie the game or go ahead. And it would be a really bad look on Cora if he kind of gave up when they were down by 1 run and it was only the 5th inning. So obviously the thought process there is to go to your higher leverage arms, and it's too bad it didn't work out and that Justin Slayton didn't have it, and that just is what it is. And the offense overall continues to struggle, especially guys like Devers, Bregman, Casas, and Story. But Garrett Whitlock being part of that high leverage pen group is huge for this team because not only does he pitch better and looks more comfortable when he's in the pen, and he specifically even said that he'd rather pitch out of the bullpen than be a starter, but also it gives the Red Sox a much better chance in games where they're trailing maybe by a run or 2 late in a game or winning by 1 or 2 runs and they want to keep the score close. He's a guy that they can throw into a game in those types of scenarios and feel like they're still in it. So if they took him out of the bullpen and made him a starter when they don't really need him to start because of the rotation that they do have, then they're basically saying, all right, a guy who we can use in high leverage is no longer going to be available in the pen. And that could cause serious issues for the Red Sox bullpen moving forward, a bullpen that already has some question mark pieces in it. Now you're pulling a guy out of that who could be one of the key pieces of that pen. So keep Garrett Whitlock in the bullpen. I just think he absolutely thrives there. He pitches really well under high pressure, and I think he sees pitching in the bullpen as higher pressure because it's shorter stints. So if he's throwing 1 or 2 innings, he has to go out there and deliver. Whereas with a starting pitcher, if they have 1 bad inning, they can make up for that later on. So Garrett Whitlock to me thrives in those types of situations where he's only pitching 1 or 2 innings, so he has no choice but to go out there and from the get-go pitch really well. I think mentally that works better for him, and I just think in terms of his pitches, he just looks a lot more confident pitching in that type of role. So I'm really happy the Red Sox made that decision. Bullpen Garrett Whitlock is and has always been better than starter Garrett Whitlock. That is just something that I've always been a big advocate of, and I'm glad the Red Sox finally have picked up on it and said, all right, we are going to have Whitlock be in the pen. Now, of course, what happens if more starters get injured? I mean, Brian Bayo and Lucas Giolito are coming back soon, but say, Garrett Crochet, Walker Buehler, and Tanner Houck all end up on the IL at the same time. That's obviously extreming it. The chances of that happening are incredibly slim. Say that does happen and they need to pull another starter. Maybe in that scenario, they consider throwing Whitlock into the rotation, but they still have Cooper Criswell pitching out of the pen, who got extensive starting experience with this team last year in Whitlock's absence. So maybe they would go to him first, but it can't hurt to think about all the possibilities, because you do unfortunately need to have contingency plans in place for when the inevitable injuries do happen, because it's just part of the game. So if I'm the Red Sox, thinking of other options to bring into the rotation if there are multiple injuries before asking Garrett Whitlock to do it, just because you also don't want to throw off his rhythm. And with a guy like Cooper Criswell, you can do that because he did show last year that he wasn't really affected by the idea of switching from starting to being in the bullpen. He was able to do both a little bit more effectively, whereas with Whitlock, he's already expressed that he doesn't want to start, and I would be a little bit worried about him making that transition when his arm is in the mode of pitching out of the pen. To try to have him switch to a starter partway through the season because of an injury would worry me, and I would feel like there's a chance that he would get injured again, because mechanically he's adapted to throwing shorter stints in the pen and not more over a long-term scenario, as in pitching 5 to 6 innings for a start. So is Garrett Whitlock in the bullpen to stay? I hope so. I hope that the way that he's been pitching in the pen has shown the Red Sox that that's where he belongs. From a pitching standpoint in general, I know they're still trying to work some things out. Guys are still not healthy. And of course, when those guys come back, hopefully the starting rotation will look a little bit better, and it'll be interesting to see what kinds of moves they make in terms of sending people down to AAA versus keeping people up in the bullpen versus maybe DFAing a guy or two when their main guys come back. But they do need to try their best to tread water, and obviously starting 1-4 is not a way to tread water, but it is a way to at least figure out early on what the problems are so that those can be fixed before it gets into the important games of the season. And obviously, it's not that all these games are unimportant, but the really early season games are going to end up looking so irrelevant come September. If the Red Sox clinch a playoff spot, it's no longer going to matter that they started 1-4 in March, but it's the idea of team morale and wanting to adjust those attitudes ASAP and go out there and play with a winning attitude, so that you don't get yourself into too deep of a hole early on that it completely destroys how the team is feeling. So keep Garrett Whitlock in the pen. Make sure that your problems are in check, and look forward to the guys you have returning, because coming up, I'm going to be talking about a guy who struggled in his Red Sox season debut against the Orioles on Monday, and it's definitely cause for some concern about him. Get the supplies you need from the site made for the skilled trades, SupplyHouse. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, SupplyHouse is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400 plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need, delivered fast from coast to coast. Need help with an order? SupplyHouse offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free Trademaster program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage. Now it's your turn. Join the Trademaster program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Make sure you take advantage of that great deal on your electrical supplies. Never can be too low on those, that's for sure. So the Red Sox did take an 8-5 loss in the series opener against the Orioles on Monday with an obscure Tuesday off day today. That doesn't usually happen, but scheduling wise, it worked out that way. Monday was the Orioles home opener, and that's why the Red Sox had a day game against them. And then they are off today with Garrett Crochet making the start on Wednesday. And Garrett, buddy, if we ever needed an ace caliber performance from you, let's do it tomorrow. Show that you are the ace of this team that the Red Sox traded for. I'm very excited about Crochet. I think he's going to have a really good year in a Boston Red Sox uniform. But this team could just use a win. They could use an offensive breakthrough and a solid performance from Crochet to really get things back on track. But while they still have pitchers out, and both Lucas Giolito and Brian Bayo are expected to make rehab starts with the Woo Sox this week, so they should be back soon. But the Red Sox do kind of need to make ends meet until then. And Sean Newcomb is one of the starters who is temporarily in the rotation until those guys come back. He had a fantastic spring, and the Red Sox made the decision after the spring that he was going to be that guy to take that fifth spot in the rotation to start the season. And he struggled in Baltimore on Monday. He went 4 innings, giving up 8 hits and 4 earned runs while walking 2 and striking out 4. His first inning was a complete mess. He gave up 4 runs in that inning, and the first 4 batters that he faced all recorded a hit. So I said, oh geez, like this could be very, very bad, because he didn't record an out until the 5th batter of the inning. And then he did come back and record a couple strikeouts after that. So that was good to see. But he was allowing so many hits to these Orioles, and they were kind of walking all over him in that first inning. And will I say that he did settle down a little bit after the first inning? Yes, things were not nearly as bad as they were, but a lot of that is thanks to his infield defense as well. They did turn a few double plays. He actually started one of those double plays. The ball was grounded to him. He threw it to second base, and then it went to first for the double play. So that was nice to see. And then there were a couple other ground balls that were executed by him that ended up in his infield, and they got a double play after that a couple times. So they were able to do their job defensively, and obviously a pitcher has to generate the double play ball, and then the infield needs to do its job by turning the double play. So he was able to generate those ground balls. They were able to turn double plays off of that to limit damage in certain innings, which I thought was really good. For the Red Sox, they turned a double play in each of the second, third, and fourth innings when he was still on the mound. So things did start to get a little bit better, but he was still giving up a lot of hits. His cutter was not all there and was very hittable in this game. His fastball velocity could have been a little bit better too. So am I crazy concerned? No. And the biggest reason is because I know that he's not going to be in the rotation for very long. Part of it could be, his first start of the season, wants to make a good impression. So he could have had some jitters, and you could see that very early on in the game. He just really didn't have his command and velocity there in that first inning at all. So I think part of that could have been that, but also maybe the Red Sox didn't make the wisest decision on having him be part of the rotation, even though he had this great spring. And, people are wondering, should it have been Quinn Priester? Maybe they just feel like they want to give him some more reps in AAA before he gets his call up. So obviously nobody would have known exactly how he was going to pitch on his first start of the season. But if anything, he'll probably make one more start. I mean, I'm not overly concerned about it. Of course, I hope he bounces back his next start and throws a lot more effectively. But because of the fact that he's a temporary piece until guys like Giolito and Bayo do come back, that makes me feel better looking longer term here, because obviously there were high hopes for the Red Sox going into Monday's game. We were hoping that getting out of Texas and having a change of scenery would be beneficial, but the Red Sox lost again because they struggled. So that's the biggest thing for me, is the fact that it was disappointing, the timing of it, because things haven't really been going well for the Red Sox over their first few games of the season in general. So I think adding to that on Monday was very disappointing. But if I'm the Red Sox right now. I'm not panicking too much about it because you know that you have reinforcements coming. You know you have your guys coming back who are going to be regular pieces in your rotation. And then Cutter Crawford eventually down the road too. They'll have to figure out if they want to go with a 6-man rotation or how they want that to work when he comes back. But this was good for Newcomb. It was good for him to get that experience of pitching and making that start with the team because he might need to be on standby because later on in the season, if a starter gets hurt again, he could be a guy that the Red Sox once again consider to pitch in the rotation in that spot. So I didn't like a lot of what I saw from him. I will say he limited a lot of damage in the second, third, and fourth innings. He just had that very bad first inning. And then things fell apart for the Red Sox, obviously late in the game with the bullpen not doing its job. But Newcomb was able to hold them after the first inning, and that's definitely a little bit promising. Hopefully he can have a slightly better start next time if he makes another start, or they might just say we don't want him to make another start, and then they call up Priester or something like that, or have Criswell make a start until one of those two players in Giolito or Bayo comes back. So there are multiple things that they can do here, but overall he struggled, and it was tough to watch, especially that first inning. So I'm hoping that if he does throw again, that he's more effective next time. And hopefully the Red Sox can just get back on track. That's all we're looking for here. We just want this team to get back on track and start playing Red Sox baseball that we can be excited about. Again, still very, very early as it is literally April 1st. So no need to jump to conclusions or panic yet, but definitely some things that the Red Sox need to fix over the course of this season. And we'll see how things play out there. Hopefully they can get a big win tomorrow with Garrett Crochet on the mound and that things can start to get a little bit better for them. They can gain some more momentum as they head into their home part of their schedule and the home opener on Friday. Hopefully they're in good spirits and have picked up a couple wins by then. So we'll have to see how that all plays out. But like I always say, as hard as it might be at this moment, keep the faith. It's still so early on in the season. So much can still happen. Go Red Sox, and I'll catch you on the flip side.